Hello everyone, I'm very glad that you listened to my story. Please give me a follow and like the video if you enjoyed it. Feel free to comment and provide feedback so I can improve the sound quality. Yes, I will now continue the unfinished story. Chapter 31. I'll handle this matter. Why don't you go and take a look at the situation below? There may be a lot of geniuses in this dog-eat-dog world, but a genius that hasn't fully developed is no powerhouse. Duan Muqing only has his luck to blame for his own death. For someone with both ice and fire warrior souls, do you think the sect leader would punish him? Qin Tian pondered before he spoke and shot a burning gaze at Li Lingtian, who was down below. Flaming sacred body, ice vitality warrior, ice and fire warrior souls. It was nothing for Skycloud sect to lose a star radiant body and attain such a brilliant disciple in return. It was not as though the sect would cripple this genius of ice and fire warrior souls, unless the people in the sect had lost their mind. With enthusiasm all over his face, Long Tian made the announcement after he had obtained Qin Tian's approval. Out of the 10-odd tournaments he had hosted, this match was the most captivating because he had witnessed a warrior disciple's great ability. Senior brotherly, senior brotherly. The disciples rejoiced with cheers. Even the sect's dozen-odd super geniuses had to admit defeat and were itching to try their hand. However, they were also overwhelmed with fear at the thought of Li Lingtian's ice vitality divine fist. Head to Medicine King Valley and request for a bottle of sacred healing medicine, the 10,000 spirit pill for Li Lingtian. A Tier 9 warrior spirit judge beside Qin Tian instructed before handing a voice-transmitting charm to another warrior spirit disciple. Based on his reputation and position, as well as current circumstances, it was normal to ask for treatment medicine. 10,000 spirit pill? A grade 4 10,000 spirit pill. The elders were taken by surprise. The 10,000 spirit pill was a grade 4 pill, and a pill like this was considered the best in Skycloud sect. Is there anyone else who wishes to challenge someone? Long Tian waited until the elders were done with their deliberation before he asked out loud. The disciples beneath shook their heads violently in refusal. Who would dare to compete with a superior powerhouse? There was no one else like Li Lingtian in Skycloud sect. I will now proclaim the results, Long Tian cried out with a smile on his face. Meanwhile, several warrior spirits helped Li Lingtian up to sit on the platform for treatment. They then stabilized his meridians with their Woodpath warrior soul. First place belongs to Li Lingtian, a Tier 9 peak warrior disciple. Li Lingtian of the Ice and Fire warrior souls is the first of his kind in Eastern Spirit Greenland for 100 centuries. In the 1,000-year history of Skycloud sect, he is the first to achieve the Tier 9 peak warrior state at the age of 15. All disciples should take Li Lingtian as a model and make Skycloud sect proud. Although it was uncommon, Long Tian included an introduction of Li Lingtian and took the opportunity to draw inspiration from him to the disciples below. Indeed, senior brother Li's ice and fire warrior souls are a rare find in Eastern Spirit Greenland for hundreds of centuries now. Senior brother Li is only 15. I have forgotten that he's only 15. You can never be too old or young to have ambition, just look at senior brother Li's achievement at 15. Countless disciples below were engaged in discussions amongst themselves, and no one could deny Li Lingtian's ability. With an ability that spoke for itself, no one dared to mess with him. Yang Xiaotian, I can recall your encounter with senior brother Li in the Life or Death Canyon, he. Taking a glance at Yang Xiaotian, who was next to him, a Tier 3 warrior spirit mumbled. The incident between Li Lingtian and Yang Xiaotian in the Life or Death Canyon was a known fact. As someone who had once attempted to kill Li Lingtian, what was in Yang Xiaotian's mind now that Li Lingtian had proved to be an exceptional force? Yang Xiaotian was put through the ringer. Despite his strong build, he was breaking into sweats on the inside. Dongfang Qingyu, a Tier 6 warrior spirit, takes second place. After a round of discussion, it was concluded that Dongfang Qingyu's ability could not compare to Duan Muqing, but because Duan Muqing was wiped out by Li Lingtian, Dongfang Qingyu still retains second place. Third place, Lan Yuyan. Fourth place, Xiao Tianba. Fifth place, Murong Tianxiao. Sixth place, Zhou Suifeng. Soon, Long Tian declared the rankings. The only change in placing was Li Lingtian, who gained first place. We will now begin to distribute the reward for the disciples who have earned a place in the ranking. Prizes were then granted to the 97 disciples from the 100th place and below. After that, the 10 other disciples, who ranked between 4th to 13, were bestowed a mediocre spiritual equipment, spirit binding pill, and spiritual stones. Third place, Lan Yuyan will receive 2 bottles of spirit binding pills, an onyx tier inferior skill, an ordinary spirit equipment, 5,000 spiritual stones, and 5 spirit void pills. Second place, Dongfang Qingyu will receive 2 bottles of spirit binding pills, an onyx tier inferior skill, an ordinary spirit equipment, 10,000 spiritual stones, and 10 spirit void pills. The top 3 only received their rewards after the other disciples had been granted theirs. The prizes for third and second place, compared to the rest, were much more abundant. Spirit binding pills, onyx tier skill, ordinary spiritual equipment, and spirit void pill were rewards that a regular disciple could only dream about. Spirit void pill? Isn't a grade 3 pill used to advance to warrior king state? 10,000 spiritual stones. An ordinary spiritual equipment. I wonder how far I could go if I was given a spiritual equipment. Gasping at the sight of these rewards, the disciples turned green with envy. However, they quickly accepted the fact that only gifted disciples like them were deserving of these prizes. First place, Li Lingtian will receive. Long Tian raised his voice intentionally for everyone to hear. The disciples were well aware that the prizes between first place and other rankings were poles apart. Since the rewards for second and third place were already amazing, they wondered how much better the first place would be. The disciples beneath quietly listened without making a peep, in fear that they might miss the reward announcement. First place is rewarded 2 bottles of spirit binding pills, an onyx tier moderate skill, a peerless spiritual equipment, 200,000 spiritual stones, a bottle of spirit void pills, and the honorary title of an elder. Long Tian beamed as he opened the storage sack of the champion. After taking a look at the rewards inside, his smile turned into envy and jealousy. These rewards were out of this world. Even as a tier 9 peak warrior spirit, he did not possess such fortune. What? An onyx tier moderate skill. Peerless spiritual equipment. A bottle of spirit void pills. The honorary title of an elder. Awe, anxiety, and shock were written all over the disciples' faces. Even the judges and elders themselves were dumbstruck. It was simply unprecedented to award a disciple with such a marvelous prize. A peerless spiritual equipment was almost unattainable, even to warrior king powerhouses. However, they were more shocked by the honorary elder title because this meant that he now dominated over the disciples. Long Tian had one of the judges pass the prize along to Li Lingtian. By then, Li Lingtian's wounds had stabilized, but it was his internal wounds that came as a shock. A Woodpath warrior soul disciple who stabilized Li Lingtian's injury was perplexed because Li Lingtian's internal wounds recovered on its own. Although he was appalled by this phenomenon, he dared not utter a word. Li Lingtian kept the storage sack and he too was surprised by the prize. These pills and spiritual stones were definitely what he needed, especially the spiritual equipment and skill. With that, it draws an end to our grand tournament. I hope there will be another Li Lingtian 5 years later. The top 100 disciples and top 10 disciples in the third stage, please remain here. The other disciples are free to leave. Please do concentrate on your cultivation, Long Tian loudly announced. He then walked towards the back of the square with the remaining disciples. The elders and judges on the platform, as well as 100 over disciples, cleared the square in a flash. Li Lingtian followed Qin Tian behind too. While they were on the way, Many disciples greeted Li Lingtian while on the way out of their fear for his ability. As he quietly trailed behind, Li Lingtian tried to wrap his head around the mystery of their post-tournament destination. After all, he still had an injury to attend to. It was not long before they arrived at a main hall that had many warrior king powerhouses and numerous warrior spirit disciples waiting in there. Li Lingtian swept a glance at the people in the hall and was shocked by his discovery. There were 22 warrior king and a black-clothed elder in the middle whose cultivation level he could not see through. Sect leader. Qin Tian and the other judges saluted with respect. They then made way for the other disciples to pay their respects. With that, even the disciples who had never seen the elder in black knew that he was the sect leader of Skycloud sect, a warrior ascendant powerhouse. Overcome with excitement, the disciples saluted the elder with respect. This person was the most authoritative figure in Skycloud sect, the ruler of a section. There's no need for formalities. Ling Tianfeng cast his eyes over the disciples with a satisfied look, but with a frown, he darted a piercing stare at Qin Tian's group. I am to blame, I accept my punishment, sect leader. Thud. The 4 warrior kings and judges fell on their knees. They were aware that the sect leader had noticed Duan Muqing's absence when he scanned the disciples. The sect leader was familiar that Duan Muqing's ability would surely earn him a spot in the top 5, so something must be wrong for his presence to be missing. Why aren't you kneeling? Qin Tian yelled at Li Lingtian for failing to kneel. He was the source of this incident, and with that, he should get down on his knees even if it was just going through the motions to seek pardon from the sect leader. Why should I kneel? Li Lingtian answered in a neutral voice. He had nothing to hide. Sure, he killed Duan Muqing, but the blame was not on him since the 4 warrior king elders were also present on the scene. Life and death were decreed by fate in the law of the jungle. He would not give in to kneeling at a time like this. You killed Duan Muqing, aren't you going to accept the punishment? Qin Tian shouted with beads of sweat dripping down his neck. He was a mere insect before the sect leader, and he could easily lose his life if sect leader was provoked. Chapter 32. Speak. Ling Tianfeng looked extremely troubled when he heard that Duan Muqing was dead. Although he was terribly shocked on the inside, he could not lose his cool because he was the sect leader. During the final match, Li Lingtian challenged Duan Muqing, who was using the Star Radiant Body. Li Lingtian used the Ice Vitality Divine Fist to kill Duan Muqing. While Li Lingtian was using the Flaming Sacred Body and Ice Vitality Warrior Soul, he simultaneously turned the Ice Vitality Divine Fist into the 300-yard frost. The disciples tried to stop him, but it was useless. As one of the disciples, I am also guilty of Duan Muqing's death. Sect leader, please punish me. Qin Tian trembled as he verbally recounted the final match. He neither exaggerated the things that had happened nor concealed anything at all. Qin Tian had purposely mentioned Li Lingtian's use of the Flaming Sacred Body and Ice Vitality Warrior Soul. That way, the disciples would receive a lighter punishment if their sect leader was also shocked by Li Lingtian's innate talents. Moreover, Qin Tian would not betray Li Lingtian. Although Li Lingtian was merely a warrior now, he had a bright future ahead of him. Star Radiant Body, Flaming Sacred Body, Ice Vitality Warrior Soul, Ice and Fire Warrior Souls. Ling Tianfeng's expression changed drastically. As a warrior ascendant powerhouse, he naturally understood that these types of warrior souls and their components were extremely powerful. Even until the end, he was still shocked by Li Lingtian's Ice and Fire Warrior Souls. However, Ling Tianfeng felt bad that the Star Radiant Body had been destroyed. You there, step forward. Nobody dared to speak. Everyone had dumbfounded looks on their faces because what Qin Tian had said resembled a loud and thunderous noise that seemed like it had crushed their fragile hearts. Ling Tianfeng's stern gaze was fixed on Li Lingtian before he waved at the young man. I, disciple Li Lingtian, would like to pay my formal respects to you, sect leader. Li Lingtian respectfully bowed and stood still when he was about 30 feet in front of Ling Tianfeng. He looked at the older man calmly while the entire hall turned quiet the instant their gazes met. A frightening force erupted and the warrior ascendant's repression instantly enveloped Li Lingtian. Feeling as though he was being crushed by a mountain, Li Lingtian's face turned completely pale. The repression instantly disappeared as soon as it arrived. However, Li Lingtian felt as though all the strength in his body had been sucked out of him like air. He nearly sat on the ground, but since his gaze was still fixed on Ling Tianfeng, he did not show any sign of flinching. All right, all right. As for the ice and fire warrior souls, please keep in mind from now on that you are strictly forbidden from killing your fellow disciples in the section. The sect has previously used this, so it might save your life. Everyone had felt the uneasiness but none of them dared to catch their breath. All they could do was stare at Li Lingtian and Ling Tianfeng while they secretly wondered how the teenager would endure the sect leader's rage. However, Ling Tianfeng's words shocked everyone. They had never imagined that he would let Li Lingtian off without punishing him, much less give him one of his prized possessions as well. Yet, the onlookers watched as a jade slip flew toward Li Lingtian. Moments later, they finally understood why this had happened. Since Li Lingtian had managed to kill Duan Muqing despite the latter's powerful star-radiant body, this meant that Li Lingtian's ice and fire warrior souls were definitely stronger than the star-radiant body. The sect leader would not kill this genius because he had just lost one earlier. Your humble disciple thanks you, sect leader. Li Lingtian took the jade slip and kept it inside his storage sack without even looking at it. He gave Ling Tianfeng a bow before he stepped back and stood with the other disciples. All four of you will spend a year reflecting on your mistakes, and your benefits will be deducted for 2 years. Ling Tianfeng turned to the four elders and coldly spat. He then waved his hands hurriedly and instructed all four of them to withdraw themselves. Thank you very much, sect leader. The four elders were shocked for a while before their hearts were immediately filled with joy. This punishment was not severe at all. They knew that the sect leader was showing them mercy because all four of them would definitely be stripped of their titles as elders if they were punished according to the previous rules. I will handle this matter. The competition was brought forward this time in regards to the matter at Hidden Dragon Isle. That place is only opened once every 100 years and this is going to happen soon. The Sky Cloud sect has a quota of 200 individuals. The disciples who ranked among the first 100 are included, but anyone who is over 30 years old is strictly forbidden from entering. Hidden Dragon Isle is one of the most mysterious practice grounds in eastern Spirit Greenland. There is an abundance of medicinal supply, demonic beasts, and treasure there. However, it is also extremely dangerous. Numerous disciples from the 4 mysterious clans in the 4 great empires will be entering Hidden Dragon Isle. All of you are impressive geniuses, so I hope that you will be able to make the Sky Cloud sect proud. Every time Hidden Dragon Isle opens, it will also be a time for all the great forces to change their ranks. If you want to stabilize your position in the Sky Cloud sect, you must gain more resources from Hidden Dragon Isle. I'm not going to mention other things, but I hope that everyone will work hard when we leave for Hidden Dragon Isle in 10 days. After the expedition to Hidden Dragon Isle, it will be time for Sky Dragon Empire's ranking battle that is only held once every 10 years. All of you should work hard. Ling Tianfeng relayed the matters about Hidden Dragon Isle before he finally announced the names of the disciples who would be entering that mystical place. Fortunately, Li Lingtian was one of them. When Li Lingtian left the hall, one of the disciples below him gifted him a bottle of pills. So, Li Lingtian politely accepted the pills from him and walked out of the hall. He knew that Qin Tian had asked his disciples to bring him this bottle of pills from the Medicine King Valley. It was a place in the Sky Cloud sect that specialized in refining pills. After Li Lingtian had left the hall and returned to his room, he realized that several people were already waiting for him there. Brother Lingtian, how are your injuries? As the first person who saw Li Lingtian, Tang Zimen quickly ran forward and held his arm before she asked him about his wounds in a concerned manner. The other people also had worried looks on their faces when they approached him. It's not serious. I'll be fine after a few days of rest. Li Lingtian smiled as he looked at Tang Ximen, Shweta, and the others. He certainly had good friends. After that, Li Lingtian returned to his room and chatted with the group for a while. Before Tang Ximen and the others left the room, Li Lingtian suddenly passed them some pills and spiritual stones because he realized that they needed it more than him. Li Lingtian could easily refine those pills on his own. Moreover, he would end up with too many spiritual stones and pills since he was already going to Hidden Dragon Isle. Inside the room, Li Lingtian sat down cross-legged before he exerted all of his energy and used the heaven and earth reincarnation to suppress his wounds. He also used the heaven and earth reincarnation to suppress the fire dragon's heart and immemorial ice crystal to bring back the balance. The heaven and earth reincarnation was not a technique of this world. Nonetheless, it surpassed this world's godlike existence. Hence, Li Lingtian would be extremely powerful if he could control the ice and fire warrior souls inside his body. The technique circulated for an entire day before the immemorial ice crystal was suppressed once again. Li Lingtian had also managed to suppress the fire dragon's heart. However, he realized that he had gained more control over those two beings now. As long as Li Lingtian strengthened his cultivation, he would be able to support those two mystical beings in the future. During the next 3 days, Li Lingtian used the grade 4 sacred healing medicine and the 10,000 spirit pill to heal his wounds. With that, his injuries were eventually healed. He could vaguely sense that his cultivation had greatly improved this time, to Tier 9 warrior peak perfection. Although he could not advance his true chi anymore, at least it was much purer than before. The grade 4 10,000 spirit pill is actually a type of sacred healing medicine. A satisfied look appeared on Li Lingtian's face when he looked at the pills inside the jade bottle. As grade 4 pills were also a superior existence in Eastern Spirit Greenland, he had never imagined that his sect would give him a whole bottle of it. Everything was down to strength. If the sect noticed a strong individual who had great potential, they would not hesitate to nurture them. Unfortunately, anyone who was neither powerful nor talented would not receive a single pill, much less an entire bottle of 10,000 spirit pills. Since he had used 5 10,000 spirit pills to heal his wounds this time, there were 97 pills left inside the jade bottle. These wound healing pills were a divine item that warriors would always carry with them. So, he kept the pills before he took out his storage sack. The prizes inside would definitely cause the other disciples in the sect to go crazy. Li Lingtian did not care about the 20,000 mediocre spiritual stones. He had 2 bottles of spirit-binding pills, so he gave 1 bottle to Tang Ximen and he allowed Shweta and his 2 other friends to share the second bottle. Li Lingtian also gave each of them 1,000 spiritual stones. Right now, he was only left with 17,000 spiritual stones. Although he had given out all of his spirit-binding pills, he could refine more of them later. However, the things that he cared about the most were the Onyx tier moderate spiritual equipment and the item that sect leader Ling Tianfeng had given him. Li Lingtian could not use the spirit void pill until he became a warrior spirit. This divine medicine, the spirit void pill, would only be used by warrior spirit powerhouses to strengthen their cultivation. Moreover, this pill was also essential for warrior spirit powerhouses who were attempting to become warrior kings. It's a peerless spiritual equipment, the cloud-startling sword. An excited expression appeared on Li Lingtian's face when he looked at the weapon in his hand that was as wide as his palm. Although it seemed like a small blade, this peerless spiritual equipment was extremely powerful. It was uncommon even for the average warrior king to own a peerless spiritual equipment. Not only was this weapon expensive, but it was priceless. Cloud-startling sword, start cultivating. When his divine mindfulness stirred, a strand of blood essence shot out of his finger. With that, the cloud-startling sword immediately leaped up and started to spin in the air while numerous mysterious and dark spells were unleashed. SHH, SHH. Faint noises echoed from the inside of cloud-startling sword before Li Lingtian formed traces of a connection with the weapon. Return. 10 minutes later, Li Lingtian had managed to catch the cloud's startling sword with just one hand when it returned to his palm. Suddenly, a terrifying spiritual chi drifted out from the blade. The cloud's startling sword and the Keelan sword were worlds apart. They were completely different because one was a peerless spiritual equipment while the other was an ordinary spiritual equipment. If I used this peerless spiritual equipment, the cloud's startling sword, and unleashed the bright moon in soft breeze form now, anyone who is less than a tier 3 warrior spirit would be no match for me. Li Lingtian made mental comparisons upon sensing the cloud's startling sword's impressive force. When he previously killed an earth dragon, he had to use the Keelan sword and vast obscure extermination to get rid of it. However, if he used the cloud's startling sword now, he would be able to solve his problems easily. The cloud's startling sword was 3 feet long and 2 inches wide. As an intense spiritual chi dispersed from the weapon, a silver glow curled around it like beautiful autumn waters. When Li Lingtian's divine mindfulness stirred, the cloud's startling sword was immediately sheathed before it kept itself inside his storage sack. Moments later, Li Lingtian started to examine the light gold-colored jade slip that Ling Tianfeng had given him. Change your shape. Suddenly, Li Lingtian was filled with shock. He had never imagined that a jade slip like this would be a priceless treasure. Upon using it, it seemed like he had possessed a clone and that it could act as his replacement. In other words, this jade slip could save his life when he used it unless he was fighting a warrior ascendant level powerhouse. Otherwise, it would be unlikely that anyone who ranked lower than a warrior ascendant could kill him. However, he could only use this jade slip for a limited number of times. Since his seniors had previously used it, he could only use it once now. Treasures like these were a rare commodity throughout Eastern Spirit Greenland. As such, it showed how powerful the warrior ascendant powerhouses were because they had managed to craft these treasures on their own. With that, Li Lingtian kept his precious jade slip before he finally started to cultivate. Chapter 33. Li Lingtian walked toward the library chamber at a leisure pace. The winner of first place would be rewarded with an onyx tier skill, but this skill could only be cultivated by a warrior spirit powerhouse. Even if a warrior disciple had more than enough spiritual stones, they could not access this onyx tier skill. Once he arrived at the library chamber, Li Lingtian explained his purpose of visit. However, the old man glanced at him before a strange look appeared on his face. Are you the Li Lingtian who has won first place at the tournament this time? The old man spoke quietly because he was filled with shock. During this period, rumors about Li Lingtian had been spreading throughout Skycloud sect like wildfire. Li Lingtian, who used to be a peripheral disciple, was now a tier 9 warrior who had managed to defeat the tier 6 warrior spirit, Duan Muqing. Despite Duan Muqing's possession of Star Radiant Body, he was still killed by Li Lingtian. Li Lingtian was a powerful genius who possessed the Flaming Sacred Body, Ice Vitality Warrior Soul, and Ice and Fire Warrior Souls. Not only were all the disciples in such awe of him, but he was also used as a yardstick for the others in the section. Yes, I am that disciple. Li Lingtian replied respectfully while he waited for the old man to let him pass. Since the old man was guarding this place, Li Lingtian had to respect him even though he was here to retrieve his prize. Not bad. You may enter. The old man nodded. This young disciple of 15 years old had managed to possess the Ice and Fire Warrior Souls and kill a Tier 6 Warrior Spirit powerhouse. Li Lingtian was definitely a superior existence in every regard. Li Lingtian immediately walked up to the second floor once he entered the library chamber. This was because the Onyx tier skills that were cultivated by the Warrior Spirit disciples were kept there. 9 Split Fist, an Onyx tier inferior skill. Great Wisdom Scripture, an Onyx tier inferior skill. In comparison to the lower levels, the second floor's skills were much stronger. Although there were significantly fewer skills and techniques here, all of them were of Onyx tier. Li Lingtian started to search the area. Since there was no time limit here, he could look for his skills without worrying at all. It took him 2 whole hours to look for a skill. In that time, he had seen almost all of the skills here and noticed that they ranged from onyx tier inferior, moderate, and superior skills. Even though there were only a few types of onyx tier superior skills, he did not possess the requirements to use these skills or techniques. Onyx tier moderate, heaven falls earth rends. Oh, this looks interesting. It's a large-scale attack that is quite similar to the Ice Vitality Divine Fist. But their attributes are different because this is a pure strength-based attack. Li Lingtian picked up the Heaven Falls Earth Rends and looked at it before he nodded happily. Soon after that, he took this Onyx tier moderate skill and walked downstairs. An Onyx tier moderate skill like this could definitely increase his strength significantly. Once he had chosen his desired skill, he immediately returned to his room to meditate and cultivate while time passed quickly. Uncle Master Bai, I've discovered the whereabouts of the Ice and Fire Ring in Skycloud Sect. A Tier 8 warrior disciple stood up respectfully on a mountain outside Skycloud Sect. The warrior spirit powerhouse who was on the opposite side glanced at the disciple before he looked at the disciple with a stern look in his eyes. Did you say that you found the Ice and Fire Ring in Skycloud Sect? Tell me what happened. If Li Lingtian was here, he would definitely recognize this elder. During his battle with the warrior spirit powerhouse, Yang Chongxiao, he did not even hesitate to send the disciples below him to their death just so he could obtain his Ice and Fire Ring. 5 days ago, a Tier 9 warrior disciple unleashed the Ice and Fire Ring during his battle with a warrior spirit powerhouse at the Skycloud Sect Grand Tournament. The Ice and Fire Ring was so powerful that it could not even be destroyed by an ordinary spiritual equipment, the Overlord Spear. The warrior disciple explained everything that had happened when Li Lingtian used the Ice and Fire Ring 5 days ago. As he remembered the look that Li Lingtian gave him that day, he was filled with fear once again. In that case, we must think of a way to draw this warrior out if the Ice and Fire Ring has fallen into the hands of the Skycloud Sect. We must obtain the Ice and Fire Ring. This Ice and Fire Ring harbors a huge secret. Remember not to act rashly and alert the enemy. Bai Yunhe sounded incredibly enthusiastic. Once he had discovered the Ice and Fire Ring's location, he could think of a way to obtain it. After all, he had spent half a year searching for it. Don't worry, Uncle Master. Li Lingtian will be participating in the training on Hidden Dragon Isle this time. When the time comes. A sinister smirk appeared on the warrior disciple's face and a dark aura filled the depths of his heart as he recalled Li Lingtian's gaze. If Li Lingtian did not die, he would have to live with this darkness. Humph, you should go back. When he enters Hidden Dragon Isle, someone else will retrieve the Ice and Fire Ring and bring it back. Bai Yunhe looked excited now. When he was done speaking, his figure flashed as he rushed toward the far end of Skycloud Sect. The warrior disciple then scanned his surroundings once before he carefully returned to Skycloud Sect. With each passing day, Skycloud Sect's numerous disciples underwent cultivation peacefully. Only a few of them were anxiously making preparations for the opening of Hidden Dragon Isle after 100 years. Hidden Dragon Isle was a legendary existence within Eastern Spirit Greenland. The spiritual chi there was very intense and the area was filled with countless treasures, medicinal supply, and demonic beasts. Unfortunately, there was always a price to pay. After all, a place that was filled with treasure would also have powerful demonic beasts or unknown risks. That day, Li Lingtian left his room and walked confidently toward the inner sect's square. Since he was an inner sect disciple now, there was no need for him to live on the periphery. However, he had no time to move to a new house because he had been busy healing his wounds and cultivating for these past few days. Besides, he had to enter Hidden Dragon Isle in 10 days, so why would it matter? Hence, it would only make sense for him to move to his new home when he returned from Hidden Dragon Isle. Numerous disciples had gathered on the square while more than 10 warrior spirit powerhouses were standing on the stage. A warrior king powerhouse and the mysterious, rarely present sect leader Ling Tianfeng were also here. Seconds ticked by before all the disciples who were participating in the training on Hidden Dragon Isle finally arrived. The 200 disciples lined up in a square array with Li Lingtian standing at the very front. Skycloud sect and the Divine Martial Continent had made this rule whereby only the strongest powerhouse could stand at the front. Besides, it was also a symbol to mark his position. Although Li Lingtian was merely a Tier 9 warrior, his strength was unimaginably terrifying. He ranked first among the disciples in Skycloud sect because he had managed to suppress and kill Tier 6 warrior spirit. Junior brother Lingtian. Senior brother Lingtian. When Li Lingtian arrived, numerous disciples greeted him politely and with respectful looks on their faces. Even the 12 super genius disciples greeted him respectfully as senior brother Li when they saw him. Li Lingtian had instantly become the main focus. The elders and other powerful individuals who were standing on the steps smiled at him as well. This showed that a powerhouse would always be popular. Since everyone is here, it's time for us to travel to Hidden Dragon Isle today. Hidden Dragon Isle is located in the borderless sea that is 10,000 miles to the south of Sky Dragon Empire. It also happens to be in the center of the four great empires. Elder Bai Yan, Elder Qingping, Elder Lu Feng, and Elder Zhu Tian will be leading the expedition to Hidden Dragon Isle this time. You must listen to the four elders' instructions during your journey. You will spend half a year in Hidden Dragon Isle. After those 6 months, you will be automatically sent out. We don't think that all of you will leave from the same place, but we have an inkling of where you will leave from. Every disciple must bring along a responsive jade slip. Once you're on Hidden Dragon Isle, you will be able to sense the other disciples from your sect as long as you're within a 100-mile radius of each other. If you encounter danger while you're outside, you should detonate the jade slip. The elders from your sect will immediately rush over to the place where the jade slip exploded. Ling Tianfeng relayed several matters regarding Hidden Dragon Isle. All of these were basic things. However, only warriors who were below 30 years old were allowed to enter Hidden Dragon Isle when it opened its doors once every 100 years. Naturally, these disciples were entering that place for the first time. Moreover, it would be the only time in their life where they were allowed to enter Hidden Dragon Isle. Li Lingtian briefly sized the other disciples before he realized that he had seen all of them in the hall before. Aside from the disciples who ranked among the first 100 in the tournament, the rest of them were at most Tier 5 or 6 warrior spirits. Furthermore, there were only 6 Tier 9 warrior spirits. It seemed that Skycloud sect truly deserved its reputation as one of the big 4 super sects in the empire. It was also extraordinary for someone under 30 years old to become a Tier 9 warrior spirit. When Ling Tianfeng introduced them, the 4 elders stood up and waved at the disciples below them. The elders would be waiting for these disciples to come back in half a year. They had spent half an hour organizing everything before Ling Tianfeng and the others left the square. In the meantime, the 4 elders had also allowed the 200 disciples to start preparing themselves. Although they were warriors, a 10,000-mile journey would take 10 days even if they traveled without stopping. Brother Lingtian, please be more careful at Hidden Dragon Isle. Mengmeng will be waiting for you to return. When Tang Ximen approached Li Lingtian and quietly murmured, her eyes were swollen red. She knew that it was extremely risky to enter Hidden Dragon Isle because there was a 90% chance of dying. Furthermore, all the geniuses from the 4 great empires and Eastern Spirit Greenland would be competing against each other at Hidden Dragon Isle. The girl was worried about Li Lingtian, but she did not want to limit his future because she knew that a good man would aspire to travel far and make his mark. Yes, I know. But you don't have to worry because it's merely Hidden Dragon Isle. I'll appear right in front of you again after half a year. When Li Lingtian saw how Tang Ximen looked, his heart was filled with a deep longing for her that lasted for some time. However, he had to become stronger because of this world's respect for the powerhouses. If he did not have power, his destiny could be easily thwarted by other people. The young man could not give up this opportunity because Hidden Dragon Isle was an important training ground. So, he smiled and consoled his fiancée for a while before he passed a storage sack to her. The storage sack contained several spirit-binding pills, vitality pills, spiritual stones, and the Keelan sword. Li Lingtian had no use for these items now, but the items were suitable for Tang Ximen because she was a warrior. Both of them whispered sweet nothings to each other and chatted while the other disciples waited. At this point in time, nobody dared to complain about Li Lingtian. In the end, Shweta and the other two came over and greeted him as well. An hour later, a gigantic swift boat appeared on the square. The swift boat was more than 300 feet in size and it resembled an airship. Chapter 34. What an impressive swift boat! When Li Lingtian saw the swift boat, his heart screamed with astonishment while he also felt extremely curious. He wondered what this vehicle was relying on to fly, about the swift boat's speed and how it was even able to fly. The four elders hurriedly entered the swift boat the moment landed before the remaining disciples walked up excitedly as well. Li Lingtian took one last glance at Tang Ximen, Shweta, and the other. Then, he finally turned around and walked toward the swift boat. Once he entered the swift boat, he saw the four elders placing a fist-sized spiritual stone into a card slot. The intense spiritual chi that this spiritual stone was much stronger than that of mediocre spiritual stones. It's a premium spiritual stone. Li Lingtian thought to himself in surprise. This also meant that premium spiritual stones existed. If an ordinary spiritual stone was worth 100 mediocre spiritual stones, then a premium spiritual stone would be equivalent to 100 ordinary spiritual stones. In other words, a premium spiritual stone could be exchanged for 10,000 mediocre ones. After all, a spiritual stone would be more precious when its quality was better. However, nobody would exchange a premium spiritual stone for a mediocre one unless they were an idiot. The elders had exhausted a premium spiritual stone just to power this swift boat for one trip, but they had a good reason to do so. For the sake of the Skycloud sect's glory for the next 100 years, they had no choice but to bring out this premium spiritual stone. Once the premium spiritual stone was placed inside the card slot, the swift boat suddenly produced a faint glow before that ray of light eventually enveloped the entire vehicle. Immediately after Elder Bai Yan had commanded and cast the spell quietly, the swift boat quickly rose from the ground. At last, it was floating through the air without stopping at all. The swift boat quickly flew out of Skycloud sect and in the blink of an eye, it had left that place. It's almost as fast as the planes in the previous world. Li Lingtian thought to himself. Deep down, he was extremely shocked when he noticed its speed. Although the swift boat was slightly slower than a plane, it was still very stable. Besides, he could see everything outside. More than 200 people were standing inside the swift boat and looking at the clouds that were moving behind them. They had even traveled past the sky mountains. Although they were moving quickly, they could not hear the sound of the wind at all because the strong gale was blocked by the faint shield of light on the outside. This is probably what it feels like to wield a sword as though you were flying. As he watched the swift boat cruising along, Li Lingtian felt moved. He recalled how he had watched someone on television talk about wielding a sword with such precision that you felt like you were flying, and he realized that this was probably what they meant. It was impossible for the warriors in Divine Martial Continent who were ranked lower than warrior ascendants to steer an aircraft through the sky. They could only rely on powerful bursts of strength to leap around and on spiritual equipment to fly. If one was a powerhouse who had achieved the warrior ascendant level, they could stand up in midair and suspend themselves there or choose to freely travel between the sky and land as they pleased. Li Lingtian felt incredibly curious when he started to look at the scenery outside. This was the first time he had left the Skycloud sect and properly entered this world. He looked down at the villages of various sizes below him. The young man could also occasionally see cities that were quite similar to the ones that he had read about in books. However, this sense of curiosity gradually vanished. So, he sat down cross-legged before he started to cultivate. The other warriors were also doing their own cultivations because they were still in Sky Dragon Empire's realm. Since the distance between Hidden Dragon Isle and Sky Dragon Empire was more than 10,000 miles, they would need 4 or 5 days to arrive at their destination despite using a swift boat. They flew for a day before they finally left Sky Dragon Empire's realm. While they were in the sky, they would occasionally encounter super powerhouses who were wielding swords as they flew. They had even encountered several clans from the sects who were on the swift boats as well. Li Lingtian thought highly of those warriors. Although he was very certain that Sky Cloud sect was one of the big 4 super sects in the Sky Dragon Empire, he was also aware that it was not the most powerful section. There were many other clans and sects who were incredibly powerful despite being hidden for generations. Li Lingtian came upon this realization when he saw the disciples below him. Although the sky was filled with warrior spirit powerhouses who were flying around, he had only seen a few ordinary warriors. There were even several Tier 8 or Tier 9 warrior spirit powerhouses among them who were below 30 years old. As time passed, the group from Sky Cloud sect had encountered many more powerhouses. The other sects had more than 200 disciples each, and all of them were warrior spirit powerhouses. Bai Yan, I have never imagined that you'd be the one leading the group to Hidden Dragon Isle this time when it opened up. A loud voice rang out and caused everyone's eardrums to hurt as the sound vibrated among them. Li Lingtian and the others had noticed the other gigantic swift boat in the sky long ago. There were more than 200 warrior spirit powerhouses in the swift boat and 4 warrior king powerhouses. The person who spoke was a Tier 6 warrior king powerhouse who had a hint of disdain on his face. There was also a tinge of ridicule in his tone. Even though Bai Yan was also a Tier 6 warrior king, Sky Cloud sect was not as powerful as the other group in terms of their overall strength. Long Haoshan, I can't believe Radiant sect allowed you to lead the group. Could it be that the sect had no other choice? Bai Yan did not display any sign of weakness. It was obvious that neither party was willing to lose to the other because they were both one of the big 4 super forces in Sky Dragon Empire. As for the other party's 4 warrior kings, one of them was a Tier 6 warrior king and the other 3 were Tier 5 warrior kings. Meanwhile, Bai Yan was a Tier 6 warrior king and the others in his group were either Tier 3 or Tier 4 warrior kings. Bai Yan, we haven't seen each other for so many years, but your tongue has grown so sharp. Unfortunately, I can't tell if you've gotten any stronger. Long Haoshan looked slightly angry, but he knew that it was inappropriate for him to lose his temper in front of all these disciples. Furthermore, numerous super forces were gathered on Hidden Dragon Isle now because it was open. If the Sky Dragon Empire's forces were not united, it would reflect badly on them. Why don't we try it and see? Bai Yan stood up on the swift boat. Since the 2 swift boats were still flying, it was obvious that the men would not fight each other now because they would still require a 2-day journey to get to Hidden Dragon Isle from here. Why must both of you insist on arguing every time you meet? At this moment, a quiet female voice echoed from the sky. The voice rang out when another gigantic swift boat appeared before the crowd. All the disciples turned to look at the swift boat that came from behind them. Anyone brave enough to scold 2 warrior king powerhouses was definitely not an ordinary person. The disciples could see that numerous warrior spirit disciples were standing inside the swift boat while 2 young women stood at the head of the vehicle. Both of them were dressed in thin robes that gave off a gentle aura. However, Bai Yan and Long Haoshan had terrified looks on their faces when they saw those 2 young women. Hello, Celestial Fairy Bai Ling and Celestial Fairy Qing Ling of Misty Pavilion. Bai Yan calmed himself down before he greeted those 2 young women. Li Lingtian instantly noticed that awkward look on the other man's face. This made Li Lingtian curious about the women who had managed to fill Bai Yan and Long Haoshan with such dread. They must be unique individuals. Celestial Fairy Bai Ling and Celestial Fairy Qing Ling are more than what meets the eye. Despite their appearances, they're actually on the same level as Elder Bai Yan and the others. Not only are they warrior king powerhouses, but those 2 celestial fairies are also Tier 9 warrior kings. Zhou Yun explained softly to Li Lingtian when he noticed the curious look on the latter's face. Frankly, he was also curious about his junior brother, Li Lingtian. Zhou Yun felt rather fearful because Li Lingtian was a Tier 9 warrior despite being 15 years old. Furthermore, he had even killed Duan Muqing, who was a Tier 6 warrior spirit. Oh, is that so? No wonder. Li Lingtian nodded to show his gratitude toward Zhou Yun. It had never crossed my mind that those two celestial fairies would lead the group from Misty Pavilion. I believe Misty Pavilion is very confident this time around. Long Haoshan spoke loudly. Indeed, the difference between Tier 6 and Tier 9 warrior kings was worlds apart. However, since they were all super forces of the SKYF Dragon Empire, it was obvious that these sects would not have any internal strife with each other at this moment. I've heard rumors that there are several super geniuses in Radiant Sect who have already stepped foot in the Warrior King realm. When Celestial Fairy Qingling's exquisite eyes glanced toward the Radiant Sect's swift boat, all of Radiant Sect's disciples could suddenly feel a malicious aura, as though a venomous snake was staring at them. None of them could hide their cultivation levels because Celestial Fairy could see everything clearly. Celestial Fairy Qingling's see-through technique has improved again. Long Haoshan was incredibly gleeful when he heard Celestial Fairy Qingling had praised the disciples of his sect. Luckily for him, Celestial Fairy Qingling and the other woman could not enter Hidden Dragon Isle anymore because they were already over 30 years old. Otherwise, Radiant Sect would be in deep trouble even if there were 10 of these sections. Li Lingtian had a great deal of respect for Misty Pavilion and the Radiant Sect's cultivation levels because they were much stronger than the Sky Cloud Sect. When he compared Sky Cloud Sect to the other two groups, he realized that there was a significant difference between them. This was particularly true for the 3 Tier 9 warrior spirit geniuses in Radiant Sect. However, Li Lingtian could not determine the cultivation level of those two white-robed women from Misty Pavilion. Haha, your group was moving at a rather impressive speed as well. You arrived slightly earlier than us. A hearty chuckle echoed from the faraway sky while the Warrior King powerhouses were chatting with each other. A huge swift boat suddenly tore through the sky and arrived. This swift boat was much larger than the one that Misty Pavilion owned, and it looked like a gigantic warship. Tianhe, you old fart. It seems like you weren't far behind. Bai Yan seemed more relaxed this time. His expression also looked more pleased now as he turned to the swift boat in the distance and yelled loudly. Haha, long time no see, Bai Yan. Your cultivation level is still the same. The gigantic swift boat was suspended in the air before a mysterious old man in a loose red robe exited from the vehicle. The man seemed like a ball of fire because his eyebrows, beard, and hair were all a fiery shade of red. Once the red-robed elder left the swift boat, he moved through the air and finally stopped in front of Skycloud Sect's swift boat. All of the disciples and warrior kings were instantly stunned when they saw his actions. They also had terrified expressions on their faces now. Warrior Ascendant. He has become a warrior ascendant. Tianhe, you old fart. You've achieved the warrior ascendant stage. Celestial Fairy Qingling, Bai Yan, Long Haoshan, and the other warrior king powerhouses looked completely dumbfounded. When they finally spoke out of shock, there was still a look of disbelief on their faces. This person's arrival had caused a bigger stir than when Celestial Fairy Qingling and Celestial Fairy Bai Ling arrived. Haha, I successfully became a warrior ascendant after I received a 3,000-year-old white cloud flower. The red-robed elder chuckled loudly after he spoke. There was a huge distance between warrior kings and warrior ascendants. In this case, the difference of one tier was equivalent to the difference between heaven and earth, or the gap between each realm. This did not apply to warrior ascendants only. Even if there was only a one-tier difference between warrior kings, that could mean a world of difference for them. In that sense, the difference would be even more apparent between warrior ascendants. Chapter 35. The 3,000-year-old white cloud flower. You've been to Sky Devil Valley. Both Bai Yan and Long Haoshan were astonished, even more so than the time Tianhe became the warrior ascendant. Sky Devil Valley, the forbidden ground of Eastern Spirit Greenland, was not only dangerous but difficult to gain access. Like Hidden Dragon Isle, Sky Devil Valley would only open at a specific time, or else no one would be able to enter. However, they knew Tianhe had a piece of treasure that was able to grant him entry. I'm much older than you all, and I've only 5 years of my life element left. If I don't achieve the warrior ascendant level, I can only wait to perish. Tianhe sighed. Warriors spent their time battling amongst the heavens, earth, and mortals whilst racing against time, chasing after their life elements. Even if one became the undefeated warrior king, one could only crumble into a pile of yellow sand by the time they reached the end of their life. The stronger one cultivated their warrior strength, the more life elements they would gain. The warrior apprentices, warriors, and warrior spirits were basically normal humans. It was only when you reached the level of a warrior king that you would be able to extend your life element to 200 years. As long as Oni achieved the warrior king level and kept themselves safe from harm, one will get to live up to 200 years. That was twice the life of an average person, and it was a reward tantalizing enough to drive everyone crazy to achieve attainment. While a warrior king could live up to 200 years, a warrior ascendant could live up to 300. The rule for the following levels goes by this: the stronger you get, the longer your life. Legend says that warrior gods could live up to more than 1,000 years. It remains a legend, but it was a dream that one could never give up on pursuing. Oh right, I forgot that you are almost 200 years old. If not for being a warrior ascendant, you would have perished long ago. Though, since you're one now, you still have about 100 years left. Bai Yan let out a sigh as well. He and Tianhe were good pals, but they had quite an age gap. Tianhe was an old man who had lived for more than a century, while he and Long Haoshan were only in their 60s. Alright, let's discuss for now so that when we meet the other sects from the 3 empires, we wouldn't be seen as losers. There's news that quite a few warrior king powerhouses have emerged in the 3 empires. Tianhe was the strongest of them all. As a warrior ascendant powerhouse, he was qualified to be in command of the entire sect. It was only natural that everyone would follow him. The warrior king Celestial Fairy Qingling, Celestial Fairy Bailing, Long Haoshan, and the rest from Sky Cloud sect grounded their respective swift boats and began the discussion. According to a reliable source, the sects in the other 3 empires have at least a warrior king level disciple. On top of that, there are also 4 great mysterious clans that are observed to be equally strong. What's scarier is that we have no idea how great their underlying power is. Tianhe revealed the news he got from his own sect. Green Jade sect was not only part of the 4 superpowers in Sky Dragon Empire, but was also the leading sect amongst the 4 in terms of strength. With Zhou Yun's explanation, Li Lingtian began to understand the distribution of powers within the Sky Dragon Empire. Amongst the 4, Green Jade sect was the strongest, followed by Misty Pavilion, Radiant sect, and Sky Cloud sect. Green Jade sect and Sky Cloud sect were on friendly terms, and the same went for Radiant sect and Misty Pavilion. At the same time, numerous superclans sought connections to these 4 sections. When we were at Eastern Spirit Greenland, our Sky Dragon Empire was the weakest. I believe after this trip to Hidden Dragon Isle, there will be some changes within the Sky Dragon Empire. Radiant Sect's Long Haoshan was serious as he uttered these words, his facial expressions gravely solemn. Though Radiant Sect had a few powerful Tier 9 warrior spirit disciples, they were nothing when compared to the warrior king powerhouses. It is terrifying to know one could achieve the warrior king level before the age of 30. These warrior king disciples entering the Hidden Dragon Isle are definitely unrivaled. Celestial Fairy Qingling lost her initial calm and started worrying about her disciples at Misty Attic, but more importantly she was worrying about the resources that were with them. If those were taken away by the other 3 great empires, the powers of the Sky Dragon Empire will be greatly suppressed. Does senior brother Tianhe have any good ideas? Bai Yan dared not address Tianhe as old B** starred anymore, even though they were quite friendly. This was a world that respected the powerful, and since Tianhe's warrior ascendant level up, their social distance grew further as the power gap between them both was greatly widened. What ideas are there to be had? A warrior spirit will stand no chance against a warrior king. It's suicidal. Wait, there are also warrior level disciples. Damn it, Bai Yan, what the hell is Skycloud sect up to? Tianhe flew into a rage when he saw Li Lingtian and his dozen warrior level disciples. He was undoubtedly triggered because, during this critical juncture, the Sky Dragon Empire's powers must stand united, yet Skycloud sect had brought along his warrior level disciples. As someone with a fire path warrior soul, Tianhe burst into flames out of rage. Everywhere within a 100-meter radius was momentarily turned into a flaming abyss. That had numerous disciples terrified as beads of sweat rolled off their bodies. Much to everyone's surprise, there was a warrior-level disciple who did not budge nor show any level of discomfort. Quite the opposite. He even seemed to enjoy the surrounding fiery aura. What the hell, a flaming sacred body. Tianhe threw a sharp glance at Li Lingtian and roared excitedly as if he saw some great treasure and then slithered forwards to him. The disciple hereby meets his senior. Li Lingtian's core trembled. The warrior ascendant powerhouse strength was immense, and it was not something a warrior like himself could withstand. Even a smidge of the warrior ascendant's repressive vigor would be above him. Be my disciple. A simple sentence as such had everyone witnessing the scene dumbfounded. Countless warrior-level disciples had envious looks on their faces at the offer. One could die happy if they were ever taken in as a disciple by a warrior ascendant powerhouse. One would be showered with resources, skills, and techniques. Not to mention, no one would dare pick a fight with a disciple of a warrior ascendant. What are you doing? Tianhe, you old B** starred. The four elders, Bai Yan, Qingping, Lu Feng, and Zhu Tian vigilantly rushed forward to stand in between Li Lingtian and Tianhe. Li Lingtian was the genius disciple that Skycloud sect had waited for thousands of years. If they allowed the old B** starred to snatch such a talent, Skycloud sect's leader and the other heavenly elders would definitely skin them alive. They would dare disrespect Tianhe just to protect this warrior-level weakling? The warrior kings and their warrior spirit disciples from the three other sects were astounded. Tianhe was taken aback as well. The four elders' first reaction was to bolt over and safeguard this warrior-level disciple. One would be a fool to not know what was happening here. The other masters who had looked down on Li Lingtian's warrior-level cultivation felt their world turning upside down. The warrior ascendant wanted to take this warrior as a disciple, and yet the few elders stopped him from doing so. How great could this warrior be? The air was mysteriously still as everyone stared at Li Lingtian and Tianhe. What's your name? Would you want me as your master? You, with the flaming sacred body, if you would take me as your master, I'll bestow upon you the heaven and earth conflagration. Tianhe ignored Bai Yan and the other elders. He asked away with a prideful smile, his eyes fixed on Li Lingtian. The warrior ascendant was being nice. Not even a warrior spirit or warrior king would reject his offer, let alone a warrior. Heaven and earth conflagration. The earth tier inferior skill, heaven and earth conflagration. It's an earth tier skill, the heaven and earth conflagration. A few warrior kings exclaimed in surprise. Their warrior spirit disciples might have not known what that was, but they knew heaven and earth conflagration was Tianhe's greatest skill, a proof of his earth tier inferior level. Even if they were the four great sects, none had such a skill in their possession. Even if they had, it could only be cultivated by a warrior ascendant powerhouse. Everyone became even more envious than ever, but they all felt happy for this warrior. His status was elevated in a snap and he was about to be granted an earth tier skill. Li Lingtian said something that startled everyone. Dark shadows loomed across Bai Yan and the other elders' faces. Even though Skycloud sect was great, A disciple with a flaming sacred body would have a better advantage if he took up the heaven and earth conflagration skill. The elders thought Li Lingtian was bound to take up this offer. Chapter 36. The disciple is deeply flattered by your acknowledgement, senior. Li Lingtian bowed respectfully at Tianhe. One knew that they could never bear the consequence of offending this warrior ascendant powerhouse, especially when he had a fire path warrior soul and a nasty temper. This disciple has a flaming sacred body and is indeed envious of the senior's heaven and earth conflagration skill, but as a disciple of the Skycloud sect, I can't betray them. Can one still be a man of integrity if they betray their own sect? If there ever was a disciple as such, he'd be nothing but bad news even if he was a genius. I wouldn't want to be such a person even if I had a low cultivation level. Such words of integrity moved the hearts of every other warrior present. It was not easy for a warrior to stand up to a warrior ascendant powerhouse. Sects detested traitors in the divine martial continent. If there was ever one present, orders will be given to pursue them to their deaths. Even so, the disciple is ever so intrigued by senior's heaven and earth conflagration. Li Lingtian spun the topic around and met Tianhe's eyes unwaveringly. Having said all that, he is still tempted by the inferior skill. What a shame! How brazen! I thought he was a righteous man, but he turned out to be so shameless. Numerous warriors despised Li Lingtian after they heard him. Anger grew among Skycloud sect's disciples, but they dared not speak before Bai Yan and the elders did. Haha, *ck off y'all. This is his choice, and a good one I'd say. Tianhe roared. His grin deepened as he looked around indifferently. Silenced by fear, all the other warriors looked down, trying to avert their gaze. They all cursed Li Lingtian quietly for being so spineless and brazen. Those scornful looks did not go unnoticed by Li Lingtian. He seemed calm and appeared to be unaffected. If senior has been cultivating the heaven and earth conflagration skill, you should have quite some confidence in handling blazing flames. Li Lingtian was making his own plans as he eyed Tianhe. An earth tier inferior skill was exactly what he was looking for. He was still cultivating Flaming Divine Fist and had not found other suitable fire path skills. His ability would be brought to a whole new level if he got his hands on heaven and earth conflagration. That's for sure. One with a fire path warrior soul is considered the strongest among the other warriors within the same tier. Even if I'm just a tier 1 warrior ascendant, I wouldn't necessarily lose to a tier 3 warrior ascendant. Tianhe was startled. He did not know what Li Lingtian was thinking to boast about his own cultivation level. Since the disciple also has a fire path warrior soul, it would be great to experience senior Tianhe's flaming strength and receive some guidance. Should the senior outperform the disciple, the loss will be accepted with grace and the senior will be my master. However, if the senior loses, then the senior shall bestow heaven and earth conflagration upon this disciple. This disciple wonders if senior Tianhe would take up this challenge. Li Lingtian was all relaxed and cheerful as he uttered his words in a breeze, only to stop and look at Tianhe for a reply. What? Everyone was stupefied and they shot looks of disgust at Li Lingtian. A warrior who wanted to compete against a warrior ascendant on flaming strength. If there was no master and disciple business taking place, one would think Li Lingtian had either lost his mind or was a natural fool. Tianhe wanted Li Lingtian to take him as a master, but Li Lingtian had falsely rejected him. Was Li Lingtian looking for a way out through this competition now? If he lost, Tianhe would become his master. If he won, the heaven and earth conflagration skill would be his. The former could only happen without a doubt, as there was a great disparity between the strength of a warrior and a warrior ascendant. Ha! Ha ha ha! Great, great! Tianhe burst out laughing. In a world where the strongest were respected, it was wise for one to change their actions accordingly. You're a warrior. I wouldn't want to take advantage of you with my cultivation level. I'll only use a tier 9 warrior level's flaming strength to compete with you. Remember, you will obtain heaven and earth conflagration if you win, but if you lose, you'll acknowledge me as your master. Tianhe's face brimmed with delight. A disciple with flaming sacred body was worth nurturing as he had unlimited future potential. The warrior ascendant did not want to bully a junior in front of so many too. However, everyone knew that even if a warrior ascendant capped his strength at a warrior's level, a warrior still would not be able to stand a chance in defeating them. This head-to-head challenge on flaming strength was fully reliant on one's experience and perfection of the skill. The situation was unfavorable towards Li Lingtian. The disciple is grateful that the senior remembers. Enlighten me then, senior. Li Lingtian beamed and smiled from ear to ear. It was very much interpreted as a dishonorable act by the other warriors. Tianhe, on the other hand, had a sudden jolt of apprehension upon seeing this curious smile. Was he being fooled? Yet, he would not believe that this warrior could beat him. Right, here we go. Tianhe suppressed his true chi to a tier 9 warrior's cultivation level right after his words landed. At the same time, a shot of truly perfected flaming chi blasted towards Li Lingtian. The flaming strength morphed into a fireball that was 3 feet in diameter. Despite being capped at a tier 9 warrior level, it had the power to melt every being on earth. This is the warrior ascendant. How freakish is that? Even after suppressing his cultivation level, not even a warrior spirit can beat this, let alone a warrior. Sigh, you can't tell whether he's just courting death or plain shameless. He must be shameless. How wild to think that a warrior can beat a warrior ascendant. All the warriors were deep in discussion. Eyes glimmering with fright, their sight never moved away from Tianhe's fireball. Ha! Li Lingtian's face was solemn. He elevated his true chi to the peak of a tier 9 warrior and initiated heaven and earth reincarnation. Fire Dragon's heart rose from his dantian and channeled through his arm. It left his palm and revealed its shape in the air. All the plants within a 110-yard radius wilted into ashes as an exquisite little fire dragon appeared in the sky. The heat was so intense, even a warrior spirit level disciple had to enter cultivation mode to protect themselves from the heat. Bai Yan and his elders were pleased to see Li Lingtian's flaming display. Tianhe was just being manipulated by him all this while. He had a plan so well thought out that he even took the warrior ascendant's moves into account. He had the fire dragon's heart, and no one in the same tier could ever defend against that. The fire dragon's heart. Fire dragon. It's a fire dragon. Long Haoshan, celestial fairy Qingling, and the other elders cried out in disbelief. The scornful disciples from 4 great sects were now bewildered. Fire dragon's heart? You piece of sh*t, you dare mess with me. Something was off as Tianhe felt Li Lingtian's flaming chi. No warrior level disciple should ever be that strong, even with a flaming sacred body. This chi made him tremble too. The situation was finally made clear to him when he saw the warrior's fire dragon's heart, but it was too late for him to react. As Tianhe's great fire orb darted towards Li Lingtian, the fire dragon's heart swooped toward the orb. As soon as they met, fire dragon's heart devoured the fireball like a delicacy in no time. Rumble rumble. The air was in a constant stir and the earth rumbled. In a blink of an eye, Fire Dragon's heart had completely consumed the fiery sphere and was then reclaimed by Li Lingtian. Bai Yan and the rest of you be *stards. You let him master the Fire Dragon's heart, and play dumb in front of me. Fine. Whatever. I can't care less about you all. Tianhe was furious, but he had to contain it due to his social status. A loss was still a loss. It was, of course, humiliating to lose to a warrior, but this was not the case. He lost to Fire Dragon's heart instead. That flaming chi was horrifying indeed. I didn't expect that a warrior could contain such a strong flaming chi. Even I wouldn't be able to handle such flames. Humph, of course you can't. You're only a tier 6 warrior spirit. It's not possible even if you cultivate for 100 more years. Even the warrior ascendant's flames have been devoured, What more, a nobody like you? The astounded warriors woke up from their daze. What happened just then felt unreal. A warrior-level disciple had mastered the mystical fire dragon's heart and swallowed a warrior ascendant's flames. He never thought of wanting Tianhe as his master. He was just eyeing the senior's earth tier skills. Truly shameless. Shameless. Why don't you give it a try, you piece of sh*t? At least he has what it takes. You're not even worth scraps. Some of the warriors finally came to understand that this disciple had no intention of making Tianhe as his master. He was eyeing Tianhe's earth tier skill all along. The surprised warriors looked at Li Lingtian, who had sat down to meditate. He was rendered motionless temporarily after summoning the fire dragon's heart and downing a warrior ascendant's flaming chi. What he did could backfire if he were even slightly careless at that point. I'm stuffed. All the warriors were unable to react to Li Lingtian's words. After he took in the warrior ascendant's flaming chi, he claimed that he had overeaten. They were all speechless. Chapter 37. Senior, let's talk about our bet. Li Lingtian stood up, suppressed the flaming chi within him and returned Fire Dragon's heart to his danshan. He collected himself and restored balance to his body after using heaven and earth reincarnation. He secretly thought to himself that he would never have dared to use Fire Dragon's heart if not for the situation. Li Lingtian's plans almost backfired, and that left him with traces of distress. Young sport, you have a future ahead of you. I hope that you won't disrespect this skill. Also, you must not touch that thing within it before you reach the warrior ascendant level, or else even the gods won't be able to save you. Tianhe unwillingly withdrew a flaming red jade slip from his storage sack. He carefully advised Li Lingtian before tossing it over to him. The future seemed bright for this warrior with a flaming sacred body. If he could master the skill contained in the jade slip, his capability would improve in leaps and bounds. However, there was something inside the jade slip that even Tianhe dared not meddle with. He hoped that Li Lingtian would not touch it too, because it could lead to the disciple's destruction. Thank you, Senior. Li Lingtian used his divine mindfulness to access the jade slip. He relied on his cultivation of heaven and earth reincarnation and other experiences to quickly verify the jade slip's authenticity. While he was in there, the warrior also saw a powerful seal, which he assumed was the terrifying thing that Tianhe had mentioned. Upon completing his checks, Li Lingtian bowed respectfully at Tianhe. This warrior ascendant powerhouse was a man of his word and turned out to be quite a candid character too. The other warriors' minds were blown. They had witnessed Li Lingtian claim his winnings and heard Tianhe praise him after that. One should definitely feel proud to receive praise from a warrior ascendant powerhouse. They just never thought that this warrior-level disciple, whom they looked down upon all this while, turned out to be so powerful. Alright, we're done with that, so let's get back to discussing this Hidden Dragon Isle business. If Skycloud sect has Li Lingtian entering as well, there wouldn't be a problem exiting. You just need to be careful. Tianhe swiftly switched the topic and began the discussion on Hidden Dragon Isle. He looked over to Li Lingtian with a disheartened smile. It took a strong one to know one, and although this disciple was no warrior ascendant, he will definitely be a powerhouse in time to come. After that, the elders and masters of Big Four sects decided that all the disciples from their sects were to refrain from fighting against each other. They should extend a helping hand whenever they could, and when they could not, no internal fighting should ensue. The three other empires and the other superclans were opponents to the Sky Dragon Empire's forces. A few other masters had also decided to pass this message on to the other clans in Sky Dragon Empire. Radiant sects Cheng Tian, Bo Mu, Xiao Tian, and Lu Xinjun. Misty Pavilions Luo Yu, Lu Yi, Dongfang Tian, Huo Xiao. Green Jade sects Murongju, Qing Fengting, Zhou Qinglong, Lu Suifeng. Skycloud sects Li Lingtian, Zhou Yun, Dongfang Qingyu, Chen Yan. They are the core elite disciples of Big Four sects. All the disciples from these four sects, If you did not meet anyone from your own sect, you are required to stand by all these disciples whose name I have just called and remain united as one. All disciples are to attack those who would start an internal fight and put an end to them. Even if they successfully exit Hidden Dragon Isle, or if they're geniuses, the Big Four sects shall cripple their cultivation and expel them from the section. After the warrior kings from Big Four sects had their discussion with Tianhe, they gave each other a clap as a gesture of swearing unity among their disciples. Anyone who intended to fight each other would be killed. This would suffice in uniting the disciples who were about to enter Hidden Dragon Isle. The elders and the warrior ascendant powerhouse had even given each other a clap to affirm their unity. That was enough to prove their determination. Among all these disciples, Li Lingtian was the only warrior. Dongfang Qingyu was a Tier 6 warrior spirit while the rest were all Tier 9 warrior spirits, with some only one step away from the warrior king level. Most of them thought Li Lingtian was just lucky to defeat Tianhe's flaming strength. They dared not offend Li Lingtian though, because they would all be dead if he were to get angry and summon Fire Dragon's heart. Big Four sects flew for half a day before they finally met the rest of Sky Dragon Empire's families and forces. Although not as strong as Big Four sects, they still had quite a number of first-rank genius disciples. All Sky Dragon Empire's disciples were made to understand that the Empire must unite during this moment as Tianhe explained Big Four sects' decisions to them. Their greatest enemies were the threat in Hidden Dragon Isle and the super geniuses from other empires. Rumble, rumble. After flying for a day, the swift boat contingent came to borderless sea. The sounds of pounding waves were especially loud and swift boats were in every single corner of the sky. What a magnificent view indeed. Li Lingtian watched as countless swift boats flew past each other in the airspace. He thought of the World War scenes he had seen on television in his previous life, the skies densely packed with fighter jets. However, those fighter jets were not as huge as these swift boats, nor were they as majestic. There were huge airships among the swift boats at borderless sea. Each airship was as large as 10 swift boats with proportionally stronger horsepowers as well. Hundreds of swift boats and airships were seen circling over borderless sea, but no one landed their vehicles. All of a sudden, great vigors quaked the sky and tore the surrounding air into shreds. The presence of Tianhe the warrior ascendant superhouse was already intimidating enough. However, as they approached borderless sea, there were 30 other warrior ascendant superhouses just like him. Sky Dragon sect only had one warrior ascendant, which was Tianhe, who was considered a newbie in that tier, while the other super forces were all led by warrior kings. The sects of other empires were all led by warrior ascendants though. There was a huge disparity between their strengths under such a comparison. Damn it, I'll have my own fleet of airships next time. Li Lingtian thought to himself as he looked at all the swift boats and airships in front of him. All of them were only here to show off, what the heck. There were hundreds of such vehicles and tens and thousands of powerhouses. Everyone was just minding their own business on their swift boats, engaged in their own meditation and cultivation, and waiting for the opening of Hidden Dragon Isle. Once you've entered Hidden Dragon Isle, search up north. Bai Yan keenly made a voice transmission to Li Lingtian. After they came to borderless sea, he kept imparting his knowledge on Hidden Dragon Isle to Li Lingtian and the other 3 disciples. He never entered Hidden Dragon Isle, but the others from Skycloud sect had. A few generations of powerhouses had gone in and came out successfully, and their recollections of experiences were passed on. All the best treasures were located up north in Hidden Dragon Isle. When the time came, those that were teleported out of there usually exited from the north too. Li Lingtian listened and made mental notes of what Bai Yan said. At the same time, he too instructed the other disciples about the few important medicinal supplies and demonic beast materials that they needed to get at Hidden Dragon Isle. As days passed, the tidal sounds grew louder while the skies grew darker. The fog had blanketed all of borderless sea, and that greatly restricted visibility. On that very day, a purple electric arc which was over 3 yards long punctured the sky and hit the sea with great destructive force. There was a deafening explosion and the earth began to shake. This was heaven's prestige, and it made all the warriors tremble with fear. Everyone who was brought in front of heaven's prestige was bound to be struck down by terror. Warrior spirits, warrior kings, and warrior ascendants alike. All the swift boats sped backward after the thunderous strike of this electric arc. They all observed heaven's prestige from afar as countless bolts of lightning cracked and struck down from the skies, followed by booming thunder. The whole world seemed like it was coming to an end, which was frightening for all the warriors as their facial expressions were as dark as the skies they were under. It went on for 10 minutes until the lightning finally stopped and the fog in the skies cleared up. It was sunny again. One then realized that a huge rift had appeared in the sky. It was about a third of a mile wide, and its length was 10 times its width. A flood of white light spilled out of the rift like the silver river from the ninth heaven. The white light had a diameter of around 110 yards. As soon as it landed straight into borderless sea, heaven and earth fused to become one. Move. As the white light settled, all warrior ascendant powerhouses from the big four sects came forward to surround it and started hurling spells at it. A massive formation soon rose to encircle the white light. A large green formation disk was tossed into it. Upon completion, all warrior ascendant powerhouses backed away swiftly and stood on the sea banks. "Get ready with the onyx crystal!" Bai Yan yelled at his Skycloud sect disciples. The seniors from other sects too were getting their disciples ready with onyx crystals, which represented a place in the formation. One could never enter the formation without the onyx crystal. It was the brainchild of the 4 great empires and a few super families. There were only 10,000 spots for all. No more, no less. Li Lingtian took the onyx crystal out from his storage sack and grasped it firmly, waiting to get into the formation. Quite a number of warriors had already flown towards the formation. Those with the onyx crystal entered without any difficulty. Upon their entrance, the white light drew them into the rift with a pulling force, and they were then out of everyone's sight. 5 minutes had passed. An explosion cracked out from the rift. A warrior had turned into ashes. "It was all because your sect's disciple is over 30 years old. 10% of your next entrance quota shall be taken away." A Tier 4 warrior ascendant powerhouse bellowed across the skies as soon as he saw what happened. He glanced over sternly at an elder from a southern empire family, who was quick to admit his mistake and accept the punishment. No warrior above the age of 30 could enter Hidden Dragon Isle. An immediate death would await them at the rift. Li Lingtian had a rude awakening as he observed the whole episode. Anyone who was 30 years old would be reduced to ashes. No one would dare to mess around. F***ck. In his previous life, he was 20 years old and 15 in this life. He really got screwed up big time. Although he was worried, Li Lingtian chose to put up a brave front. As the rest of Skycloud sect's disciples headed toward the formation, he sped up to follow them, his eyes gleaming brighter than ever. Chapter 38. Li Lingtian was in shock while he stood in the formation. The white light immediately entered his body, and he felt like he had been submerged into a hot spring. The white light had transported him to the rift before he could even react, but as he got nearer, the light started to tremble. Li Lingtian was frightened to death. He was already well past 30 years old with his previous and current life added up. The opening seemed to sense that something was off, but it was unable to decide on his age. The rift's trembling ceased. Li Lingtian's body was forcefully thrown out and went straight through the opening. After regaining his ability to react, he realized that he was amidst a grassy plain. The warriors who had yet to enter the formation felt the opening tremble too. However, since no one was killed like in the previous situation, the other warrior ascendants had nothing to say. "Ha ha ha ha. You're here at last. You've kept me waiting for the past 3,000 reincarnation cycles, and you're finally back." It was then when a faint voice came from the depths of Hidden Dragon Isle. All of Hidden Dragon Isle began to shake with uneasiness as if it was at the brink of destruction. This only happened within a split second, but all the warriors who entered Hidden Dragon Isle had sensed the destructive chi. When faced with this chi of doom, they were all as helpless as a baby. What's going on? Are we going to die? It is the ruination chi, the raging chi. The warriors on Hidden Dragon Isle were petrified. As they looked at the sky, their gaze was restless and fearful, as if the world had come to an end. Hidden Dragon Isle calmed down in an instant. It made what happened before seemed like a passing illusion where none of it was ever real. So this is Hidden Dragon Isle. Li Lingtian glanced around using divine mindfulness to take a good scan of the surroundings after he descended. There was not a single soul nor demonic beast within a 3-mile radius from him. After he peaked at being a Tier 9 warrior, his divine mindfulness was strong enough to scan up to 3 miles, which was similar to a Tier 9 warrior spirit. A usual Tier 9 warrior's divine mindfulness could only see less than a mile, but he could see up to 3 miles. He could not have achieved this level of success without having the heaven and earth reincarnation's power and a double soul. What a rich spiritual chi. I should look for a place to rest first and get my directions sorted out. Li Lingtian was surprised to see how substantial the spiritual chi was. It was so rich that his cultivation could speed up by just being there, which was much faster than consuming a grade 1 vitality pill. Even if he did not manage to get all the medicinal supplies and treasures, the trip would be worth it if he were to cultivate for half a year. The rich spiritual chi was beneficial for the herb's growth, and so precious medicinal supplies were plentiful. One would be out of luck if they found none. That being said, Li Lingtian flew to one of the mountain summits in a swift move. It was necessary to take a break before planning the next step, especially when one knew nothing of the place which was filled with unknowns. Li Lingtian meditated for a full hour in a cave. He then opened his eyes and strolled out with a confident smirk on his face. Last time, when he competed against the warrior ascendant powerhouse Tianhe using flaming strength, he used Fire Dragon's heart to his advantage and got his hands on heaven and earth conflagration. It was risky indeed, but Li Lingtian benefited from being able to further perfect his flaming strength. His mastery over Fire Dragon's heart had improved, and it would not take long for the conception of his flaming divine fist to occur as well. On top of that, he also cultivated heaven and earth conflagration. Li Lingtian's cultivation barely scratched the surface, but an earth tier skill itself carried a great deal of power. Even at its surface, flaming divine fist could not match up to it even at its best. A display of heaven and earth conflagration could turn the surrounding area of a little more than 100 yards into a sea of flames. Mighty fires would lick the skies and not even a warrior spirit powerhouse could get away from it. What was more horrifying was that all demonic beasts and warriors that happened to be within that vicinity would have their true chi absorbed by the warrior using the skill. This way, the user's true chi would be replenished, and heaven and earth conflagration would be fortified. The decrease of a warrior's speed and cultivation within an attack zone would be one of Li Lingtian's trump cards. Upon exiting the cave, Li Lingtian activated divine mindfulness. 1.5 miles away, there were 2 Tier 3 warrior spirit masters fighting each other. He wrinkled his brow ever so slightly. At Hidden Dragon Isle, those 2 warriors spared no mercy for each other. They wanted to get it over and done with before it attracted other warriors, which would mean more trouble. A small sound zapped through the air. Li Lingtian descended and observed the fight between the 2 warriors from afar. His darting sight found a sprig of 100-year-old herb which emitted spiritual chi growing from the ground. 100-year-old moon-falling grass. Great, I'm keeping it. He applied breeze technique shortly after he spoke. This century-old sprig of herb was an important ingredient for the refinery of a grade 3 pill. It would be a waste if he did not take it. Li Lingtian got hold of the century-old moon-falling grass in the blink of an eye. The 2 warriors were still fighting with all their might. He safely stashed the herb and grinned while he spectated the ongoing brawl. Oi, half-breed. Leave the moon-falling grass alone or else I'll tear you up. Yang Ming flew into a rage when he saw that moon-falling grass had been picked up by a warrior-level disciple. They were risking their lives battling each other, but a rubbish warrior took it to his advantage. "You piece of sh*t, I'll definitely kill you today." Zhou Qing stopped fighting and glared at Li Lingtian as well. The mediocre spiritual equipment he held was emitting gentle swirls of spiritual qi. An urge to kill rose from the bottom of his heart. "You two pieces of rubbish are just risking your life over a sprig of a century-old moon-falling grass. Get lost." Li Lingtian icily uttered his words. He recalled that both of them were not from Sky Dragon Empire. Even if they were from Sky Dragon Empire, he would still get his hands on the things that he wanted. Sky's ablaze sword. 100 kills fist. The two warrior spirits were stunned. Who would have thought that a warrior-level disciple could be that arrogant when faced with two warrior spirit-level warriors? To say that they were infuriated was an understatement. They leaped out of sight and bolted over toward Li Lingtian at full speed. Strong attacks were coming at him with merciless force. They reckoned this rubbish warrior could be slashed dead in one blow. Bright moon in soft breeze. Li Lingtian was all smiles when he saw the two Tier 3 warrior spirits coming at him with their attacks. He raised his arm and astounding sword appeared in his hand, which he then swung out with a light flick of his arm. There was a sliver flicker of the sword's reflection in the air. At the same time, flaming divine fist was thunderously rolled out. Bright moon and soft breeze were as fast as lighting while flaming divine fist was invincible. Slash. Clank. Astounding sword was a strong and mighty peerless grade spiritual equipment. The existence of its grade was unparalleled among spiritual equipment. Li Lingtian's display of the bright moon and soft breeze technique made it even more powerful. Sky's ablaze sword was cut into half. Blood started trickling through a cut on Zhou Qing's neck. His widened eyes that were once filled with horror had now turned into despair. Flaming divine fist was served in just a punch. Its mighty flaming strength was supported by Fire Dragon's heart's undercurrent power. Yang Ming was thoroughly scorched. Two Tier 3 warrior spirits, huh? Not bad. Just that one could only be asking for death when faced with a peerless grade spiritual equipment and flaming divine fist. Li Lingtian's gaze swept across his fist and his peerless spiritual equipment while he commented indifferently. Those two Tier 3 warrior spirit masters died before they could let out a cry, just like weaklings. Let's not be wasteful here. Li Lingtian mumbled softly while going through Yang Ming and Zhou Qing's storage sack. His methods were so skillful one could almost believe he was used to killing and looting. With his storage sack well packed, Li Lingtian employed the motion skill and dashed away from the scene. He was lost in the bushes within a flash. The two warriors shall be buried here forever. Li Lingtian flew closer to the ground while using divine mindfulness to monitor his surroundings. If there were strong demonic beasts ahead, he would then take a detour. He took a glimpse at the blazing sun in the sky, picked a direction, and headed toward it. One day passed ever so easily. Not only had he killed two warrior spirit powerhouses, but Li Lingtian also killed two Tier 2 level 6 demonic beasts. He did not need to search for materials anymore given his gain today. All that was left to do was just to harvest its internal vitals. In this strange and unpredictable forest, anyone would be a fool to not look for a safe place for themselves. Li Lingtian had a better understanding of Hidden Dragon Isle after sprinting around for a day. Hidden Dragon Isle was a lone island, and overall, a huge one. 10,000 warriors entered this space, yet he only met 2 of them today. One would have an idea on how huge the isle was by then. It was impossible for anyone to be transported into Hidden Dragon Isle with someone they knew because the transmission was random, unless there was a coincidence. Growl. Deep into the night, the isle became a heaven for demonic beasts. The howls and growls echoed loudly within Hidden Dragon Isle. Li Lingtian found a cave on a cliff and decided that it would be his hiding spot. Chapter 39. Sitting with his legs crossed, Li Lingtian was fully immersed in cultivating heaven and earth reincarnation and gaining insight on heaven and earth conflagration. Damn, don't they all come in pairs? Moments after he sat down to rest, a swoosh came out from nowhere. Li Lingtian had a vantage point over the cliff and could see two shadows, one chasing after another at a distance. He could not help but find it amusing. He had only met two people fighting over an herb after he entered Hidden Dragon Isle. Not even a single soul was seen for the rest of the day. There was someone at last, actually two of them, and it seemed like they were also in a brawl over something. However, he was all by himself, cultivating alone. Put down the green onyx fruit and I will leave your corpse intact. A booming voice blasted through the atmosphere. As soon as it stopped, a tall, burly figure leaped into the air and jumped right in front of the person who was running away. It's her. What a coincidence. The two warriors came near the cliff, and Li Lingtian caught a good glimpse of their faces. There was a tall and well-built man who seemed to be in his mid-20s that was a Tier 8 warrior spirit who held an ordinary grade spiritual equipment. 5 yards away, this man was faced by a petite lady in her early 20s. She was an unmatched beauty, yet she looked pitiful as her fair, glowing face had smudges of blood at the corner of her mouth. Lu Yiyi from Misty Pavilion. Li Lingtian did not expect to see Misty Pavilion's Lu Yiyi, who was one of the sect's core disciples. A Tier 6 warrior spirit disciple who made it to the core. That puzzled him because Misty Pavilion was not short of Tier 9 warrior spirit disciples. It was Bai Yan who told him that Lu Yiyi's true identity was not to be underestimated, as the elders of Misty Pavilion were also clueless about her origins and her background. Humph, dream as you wish, but the green onyx fruit will not be yours. Her voice was sweet, melodious, and had a mystical quality about it. Her pretty eyes glanced around for an escape route as she knew she could not fend off the Tier 8 warrior spirit powerhouse. If that's the case, I have both you and the green onyx fruit then. Mighty Storm Cloud Sword Technique. Su Tian had a sly grin in his face. No one could possibly remain untempted by such an attractive woman. Since there was no one around, he would be filled with joy if he could get his hands on green onyx fruit and have his way with this beauty while he was at it. As soon as he finished what he said, Su Tian displayed Storm Cloud Sword, the ordinary grade peerless equipment that he was holding. At that instant, the sword's glint swirled around and swiftly formed into a six-hilt sword of silhouettes. The winds and clouds rolled around with imposing vigor in the atmosphere. Li Lingtian, who stood atop the cliff, was deeply shaken. This Tier 8 warrior spirit had demonstrated mighty storm cloud sword technique from Tianjin Empire's Divine Sword sect. It was so powerful that its strength could easily surpass his vast obscure extermination. Senior sister, would you share one of your green onyx fruit with your junior brother? Li Lingtian transmitted his voice to the panic-stricken Lu Yiyi. He was determined to get the green onyx fruit, but it might not be a good idea to seize it from her. He also did not want Su Tian to lay hands on this pretty lady. Skynet shield, block. Lu Yiyi was terrorized to the core as she looked at the mighty glints of the blade. Su Tian had been hunting her down for hours, and she only managed to make it this far using the numerous treasures in her possession. Seeing that her opponent had started hurling such brutal attacks, Lu Yiyi was out of ideas and had no choice but to use her last piece of treasure. The faint voice transmitted to her at that instant made her even more petrified with the realization that her situation had just become worse. The few strokes of sword silhouettes hit Skynet shield with a thunderous bang. Lu Yiyi was violently pushed a few yards back. Skynet shield was losing its glimmer. This peerless grade spiritual equipment had blocked an attack from mighty storm cloud sword technique and was wounded. You have quite some treasures with you. A peerless grade spiritual equipment, it would be of nice use to me. Let's see how you'll hold up to this. Su Tian was actually taken aback by the fact that his mighty storm cloud sword technique, which had always been invincible, was blocked by his opponent's peerless grade spiritual equipment. He had been chasing after her for a while, and she had an endless hoard of treasures. Greed rose from the bottom of his heart. All right. If you eliminate him, I'll give you the green onyx fruit. Lu Yi started talking toward a direction where there was no one, which freaked Su Tian out. He quickly thought that Lu Yi was trying to deceive him. As expected, Lu Yi turned around and ran away. You'd think I'm easily tricked, but I'm not a kid. I'll let you know what I'm made of. Su Tian was convinced that Lu Yi intended to deceive him as she was already running away. He did not hesitate to use motion skills to pursue her. That was when a fatal chi came down on him. Vast obscure extermination, time to die. A strange, destructive blade aura descended from the sky at top speed as soon as those ice-cold words were said. The blade aura transformed into countless silver needles that tore through the air and went towards Su Tian's direction. There was a tinge of vast obscure extermination chi in the air that made Su Tian quiver involuntarily. Mighty storm cloud sword technique, 1,000 shadows of sword flickers. He bellowed and swung his storm cloud sword around rapidly. Numerous blade shadows shot toward the incoming attack. Clink, clatter. The air was in a constant quiver as the clashing of blade shadows and silver needles brought about a lot of clatters. A giant boom marked the end when the two hefty blade auras collided. The explosion threw Su Tian out of sight and created a great hole in the ground. Li Lingtian descended, looked at Lu Yi who was standing afar and grinned ever so slightly. Lu Yi saw Li Lingtian's figure and recognized him straight away. This teenage boy with a seemingly rubbish cultivation level was the one whom the warrior ascendant powerhouse wanted as a disciple. She was nonetheless comforted to see someone from Sky Dragon Empire. Blurg. Somewhere far away, sounds of blood being spat out could be heard. Su Tian was pale in the face while he spewed a mouthful of blood. He was also in deep shame. He was from Divine Sword Sect, which was a sect that specialized in sword cultivation. No one could ever compete with them in Eastern Spirit Greenland, and yet he had lost to a blade aura today. As this was not a fighting ring where he could just admit defeat to save his life, he was more disappointed with his loss. He gave an icy stare at the teenager in front of him and was at a loss for words. A 15-year-old teenager who only had a warrior cultivation level. He also noticed that the weapon held by the boy was an unexpected peerless grade. Mighty Storm Cloud Sword Technique, Destroyer Sword. I'll serve you your death. A destructive force tore up the air in the skies. All the plants and boulders were transformed into numerous sharp and glinting blade shadows. Every drop of blood seemed to have left Su Tian's face. He was suffering, and his eyes were filled with hatred. He's a Tier 8 warrior spirit. Beware, Junior Brotherly, as this is Mighty Storm Cloud Sword Technique's forbidden skill from Divine Sword Sect. Lu Yi was shouting words of caution to Li Lingtian. She was then taken aback by her concern for this stranger. Li Lingtian could not risk making mistakes at this point as well. He had experience cultivating astounding sword technique and understood the strengths of such sword forms and skills. Not to mention that the destroyer sword had exceeded his expectations. It was even more appalling than his vast obscure extermination. He could not display 1,000 shadows of fluttering flowers since he had not cultivated the technique, so it was a waste of time talking about it. Ice and Fire Ring had a powerful defense. It would be wise to first protect himself. Ice Vitality Divine Fist, 300 Mile Frost. Immemorial Ice Crystal was mobilized under Ice and Fire Ring's display. The temperature within 100 yards dropped drastically and the surrounding area turned into a glacier. Meanwhile, Ice Vitality Divine Fist headed towards Su Tian's direction with smashing force and speed. Crack. Splash. The glacier's formation had frozen the blade shadows formed by the numerous plants and boulders in ice, which greatly slowed down its attacking speed. Destroyer Sword's chi was also successfully held up by the ice barrier. Lu Yi and Su Tian were bewildered by the glacier taking shape. While Su Tian was stunned by the ongoing business, an icy chi of doom hit and turned him into an ice statue. That ice statue shattered into smithereens under Li Lingtian's single punch. Su Tian's eyes were churning despair and horror before everything was gone with the fragmented pieces. Thud thud thud. Li Lingtian's body recoiled a few yards. The ice and fire ring in front of him gradually disappeared and lost its glow. What a terrifying destroyer sword! He was utterly shocked as all the other blade shadows had been frozen and slowed down in the glacier, yet the destroyer sword managed to break through it. If not for the defense from ice and fire ring, he would have been heavily wounded. Oh no, someone's coming this way. His divine mindfulness picked up a strong chi 1.5 miles away which was heading toward them. The speed detected was amazingly fast and was as good as his breeze technique. Li Lingtian stopped talking. Su Tian's storage sack and storm cloud sword were quickly stashed away and off he dashed toward Lu Yiyi. Both of them then bolted from the scene. Their shadows disappeared immediately in the dark of the night. They would be safe in the forest because no one would ever go there unless they encountered demonic beasts. How frightening! Ice Path Warrior Soul and 3000 Mile Frost. And Divine Sword Sex Forbidden Skill Destroyer Sword. For sure it wasn't easy to steer clear from its attacks. They better not cross paths with me though, the murderer of Divine Sword Sex members was nothing compared to me. Li Lingtian and Lu Yiyi were not even gone for 2 minutes before a shadow tore through the atmosphere and descended at the scene. The young adult was surprised when he looked over the huge pit in the ground, the ice bits of the remaining glacier, and the blade aura in the atmosphere. Warrior King Powerhouse. Chapter 40, Lu Yiyi. Chapter 40, Lu Yiyi. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. In the forest, a beautiful petite maiden and a 15-year-old young man in white ran non-stop for half an hour. Both of them were exhausted. 2. Junior brother, how's your wound? Lu Yiyi noticed Li Lingtian had stopped running. With a worried expression, she asked softly. The girl was proud and arrogant. With a cold and expressionless face, she treated everyone with indifference. However, this young man was different, because he had an appealing charisma and aura. Being only a Tier 9 warrior who had entered the depths of the Hidden Dragon Isle, it shocked her that he could take an attack that she could not. No wonder the Sky Cloud sect dared to grant this genius entrance to the Hidden Dragon Isle. The care she had shown to this young man was, mostly, because he had saved her. It's all right, just a small wound, I just have to tend to it for a bit. How about you, senior sister? Li Lingtian carefully inspected the wound on his body. The injury sustained from the destroyer sword's shockwave would only require some minor treatment. Although the ice and fire ring was extraordinary, his cultivation level was still too low. Otherwise, he would not have been injured. It was not by choice that Li Lingtian had to run throughout the journey. His divine mindfulness had discovered the existence of a powerhouse on a warrior king's level. No matter how confident he was in his abilities, Li Lingtian would not dare pick a fight with a warrior king at this point. Junior brother Li, have this green onyx fruit as thanks for saving me. Lu Yiyi spoke seriously as she brought out a fist-sized fruit and gave it to Li Lingtian. Although he had only saved her because he wanted the green onyx fruit, he was still sincerely grateful. That was women for you. Whoever pleased them would be seen as a good person. Thank you, senior sister Lu. This green onyx fruit is very important to me as a Tier 9 warrior. Otherwise, I wouldn't take it from you. Li Lingtian showed a hint of embarrassment. It was already hard for the Dragon Empire and they needed to be helping each other. He felt slightly guilty for asking for the fruit from Lu Yiyi in exchange for saving her from danger. By the way, I made this spirit binding pill. It could be useful to you, senior sister. Please take it. Upon completing his sentence, Li Lingtian took out a jade bottle from his storage sack. He had made this bottle of pills when he had free time during the competition period in an attempt to improve his pill art. You're an apothecary. Lu Yiyi had a shocked expression on her delicate face. It was already shocking to know that this 15-year-old genius had cultivated to the level of a Tier 9 warrior, She had not expected him to also be an apothecary. The gentle yet cold beauty now had the expression of a little girl. Her shocked expression made her look even more charming. Coupled with her power from the misty pavilion cultivation, she looked like a goddess from legends. He, I was bored so I just practiced it for fun. Li Lingtian said as he laughed. Facing this peerless beauty, his heart pounded non-stop. A spirit-binding pill, not bad, Lu Yiyi said and shook her head wordlessly. She felt at a loss for words knowing that he had only practiced it because he was bored. Lu Yiyi opened the jade bottle to check if they were actually spirit-binding pills. Spirit-binding pills could only be made by Tier 2 apothecaries and this young man was only 15 years old. No one would believe that he was a Tier 2 apothecary. However, what she saw next made her even more astonished. What? This is a superior grade 2 spirit-binding pill. You're a great apothecary. Haha, I'm not sure, I just practiced. I can't use spirit-binding pills easily because I'm a warrior. When I produced the pills, I was already a Tier 9 warrior. Li Lingtian made a helpless gesture. It could only be blamed on the fact that he had cultivated too quickly. Let me see your vitality pill. Don't tell me that it's also a superior one. Lu Yiyi carefully placed the spirit-binding pill into her storage sack. A superior spirit-binding pill was extremely powerful. Although she had owned countless treasures, she had never owned a superior spirit-binding pill. Here. Li Lingtian took out a jade bottle that only had a few vitality pills inside. Since he was already at the Tier 9 peak, using pills would not be beneficial. It would simply be a waste if he consumed it. He continued walking forward after handing the jade bottle to Lu Yiyi. This place was not safe, he had to find a safe place to heal his wounds and also refine the green onyx fruit. As a warrior, the green onyx fruit had endless benefits and could almost boost his warrior spirit by a 100%. Otherwise, he would not have gone against that Tier 8 warrior spirit powerhouse just to obtain it. Peerless, it's a peerless vitality pill. Behind him, Lu Yiyi looked at the pill in her hand with a shocked expression. It was a legendary peerless pill. In the divine martial continent, a peerless pill was only spoken of in legends. It was impossible, even for a spiritual apothecary, to make a grade 1 peerless pill. She never thought that this young man in front of her would have such amazing capabilities. Not only that, his pill art was even more astounding. It was impossible for her not to be astonished. Junior brother, please wait. Lu Yiyi noticed Li Lingtian had continued walking forward and quickly ran towards Li Lingtian with a smile on her face, bearing a hint of slyness. She had a smile that could topple a city, another smile from her would topple an entire country. Within the forest, upon a small hill, Li Lingtian sat in a cave with his eyes closed and knees crossed, using his full power to heal his wounds. Meanwhile, Lu Yiyi also sat down to meditate and rest. Li Lingtian had originally planned to heal his wounds and cultivate alone, but Lu Yiyi had offered to protect him. Left with no choice, Li Lingtian accepted her offer. Having this beauty beside him was a blessing to his eyes. However, he could not concentrate since it was a dangerous place. As the heaven and earth reincarnation circulated, Li Lingtian placed a great spirit pill into his mouth. His injuries from the shockwave quickly healed as the pill started to refine. As expected of the powerful sacred healing medicine, his injuries and true chi had completely recovered after only an hour. If I don't use this green onyx fruit now, when else would I use it? Li Lingtian thought as he held the green onyx fruit. He then quickly bit into it and finished it with a few bites. It was almost as if he was doing something righteous. Lu Yiyi, who had just finished cultivating, could not hold in her laughter after seeing Li Lingtian. This junior brother was hilarious to her. This young man, at 15 years old, was already a Tier 9 warrior. He might even be a grade 4 great apothecary. She did not expect him to be this amusing. The look on his face when he ate the green onyx fruit was simply hilarious. MMHM. Li Lingtian was a bit shocked when he noticed Lu Yiyi was laughing at him. It was only then he realized that he indeed looked quite funny. Though, at the end of the day it was only a green onyx fruit and nothing more. However, he could not be bothered by Lu Yiyi at this moment. The power of the green onyx fruit was spreading quickly within his body. Its astonishing power and spiritual chi was rushing towards his meridians. As the heaven and earth reincarnation circulated continuously, it turned the green onyx fruit's power and spiritual chi into true chi. His true chi had now started to change. It became even more intense, almost as if it had an actual form. After half an hour, Li Lingtian's whole body was covered in sweat and he had a pained expression. Tier 9 warrior, break through it? Li Lingtian shouted as the true chi from his entire body rushed towards the warrior spirit boundaries. At this moment, the powerful true chi successfully broke the warrior spirit boundaries and his true chi started to quickly take an actual form. Strands of true chi circulated in his danshan and meridians, which eventually flowed into his danshan. The immemorial ice crystal and fire dragon's heart also received more nourishment. Li Lingtian clearly felt that his connection to the immemorial ice crystal and fire dragon's heart had gotten stronger. This meant that as long as he reached a certain cultivation level, he could fully refine the immemorial ice crystal and fire dragon's heart. When that happens, his cultivation level would increase by leaps and bounds. A strong essence spread throughout the air as Lu Yiyi showed a surprised expression. Although she knew that the green onyx fruit had a high chance of enabling him to become a warrior spirit, she could not believe that Li Lingtian could cultivate this quickly. It only took him half an hour to enter the warrior spirit realm. Absorb. Li Lingtian tightened both of his fists as the essence in the cave quickly rushed towards him. Eventually, it turned into essential chi which entered Li Lingtian's meridian and flowed into his danshan. Congratulations on reaching the warrior spirit realm, junior brother. You have surely become stronger. Lu Yiyi looked at Li Lingtian as he opened his eyes. His clear eyes were as bright as the stars in the night sky. He became even more attractive, and Li Yiyi could not help but smile. Senior sister Lu is already a tier 6 warrior spirit, while I've only just entered the warrior spirit realm. Li Lingtian said as he stood up. He felt like his entire body was filled with an explosive power which had him feeling full of confidence. The warrior spirit realm and warrior realm were on completely different levels. Not only had his true chi become even purer, but it had also increased tremendously. He would be able to master even more skills after some practice. Now that Li Lingtian was in the warrior spirit realm, he could surely kill Su Tian, who was a tier 8 warrior spirit that specialized in the divine sword, without much effort if they were to face each other again. Previously, he had had to use a sneak attack to kill Su Tian. Last time, Li Lingtian had to descend from the sky as he displayed the vast obscure extermination, relying on its great force to injure Su Tian. Otherwise, he would not have been able to use his ice vitality divine fist to kill Su Tian. I'm older than you. Besides junior brother, you were able to kill Su Tian, who was a tier 8 warrior spirit, when you were only a tier 9 warrior. Now that you're in the warrior spirit realm, you don't need to worry much if you have to go against any strong warrior spirits. Lu Yiyi showed a rarely seen smile on her petite face, which was usually cold and expressionless. It was a smile that could topple an entire city. Li Lingtian was shaken by her gentle look. His heart pounded continuously, and he did not dare take another look at Lu Yiyi. For a moment, he felt really awkward and embarrassed. He had been a human for both of his lives, and yet he still felt embarrassed in front of her. Part 4 of the series ends here. If you enjoyed it, please give us a like and subscribe so we can be motivated to make even better videos in the future.